One Saturday night back in 2016, a post was made on Orlando's Pulse Nightclub Facebook page at 2:09 a.m. It read, "Everyone get out of Pulse and keep running." The urgent message gave no context of what was happening, but within the next few hours, it was learned that the nightclub had become a scene of one of the deadliest mass shootings in the history of the U.S. Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, I'm the host, and thank you for joining today. Hey Joe, where you been? You've only released 2 episodes in the last 2 weeks. I know. Life's been happening. As most of you do, you have a normal job. I have a normal job outside of this podcast. And the last couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks previous to this, it's been really busy. And normally I can contain the busyness into the normal working day, but the last couple of weeks it was impossible, so I had to take up time that I normally work on this podcast. And that job pays my mortgage, so I focused on that. So there you go. With that being said, make sure if you are new to this podcast that you subscribe to 10-Minute Murder so that you don't miss any future episodes as we get this train back on the track and moving at a consistent speed. Wherever you're listening right now, find where you subscribe and do that. You can also connect with 10-Minute Murder on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the places. There are links in the show notes of this episode. Make sure you look there. If you're trying to contact me in any way, you'll get all the information there. If you are an OG listener, never missed an episode, and have listened to all of the episodes, first of all, I love you. Second, if you're looking for a way to help the show grow, there are a couple of things you can do. You can, first of all, let all of your friends know that your friends that are true crime friends, we all know who we are. Your non-true crime friends, they would be offended if you told them you should listen to a show about murder. But your true crime friends, they know what's up. Let them know about 10-Minute Murder. And also, if you listen on an app that allows 5-star reviews, leave a 5-star review. That helps this show grow more and more every single day. Now, let's get to today's story. June 12th, 2016 was Latin night at Pulse Nightclub, and the place was packed. By the time of last call, around 2 a.m., more than 300 people were still inside enjoying the final tunes of the night. But then the clubgoers heard a loud, repeated sound that was very definitely not Latin music. Just before the sound, a man carrying a semi-automatic rifle and a 9mm semi-automatic pistol had entered the club and opened fire near the entrance. Almost immediately, an officer working extra duty in uniform at the club exchanged fire with the shooter, but was outgunned. While assistance was on the way, the shooter himself called 911 3 times, plus he also called News 13 once. And during the calls, he identified himself as Mujahideen, Islamic soldier, and soldier of God, pledging allegiance to the Islamic State. At this point, the shooter had been inside the club for 45 minutes. While many had gotten out unharmed, dozens were either dead or wounded. Hostage negotiators were trying their best to talk some sense into the killer, but instead of surrendering, he barricaded himself in the bathroom. This guy also claimed he had planted bombs and was wearing an explosive vest, which prevented the rescue mission from progressing for a long time. Spoiler alert, no, he was not. Finally, around 5 a.m., the SWAT team had enough. They took an armored vehicle and drove it through the club's wall. While survivors ran out, the team entered the venue at the same time. The shooter exited the bathroom and opened fire on dozens of police officers. Needless to say, he was immediately gunned down. The shooting at Pulse Nightclub lasted 3 long hours. 49 people lost their lives, and another 53 were wounded. Later that same morning, the shooter was identified. The person responsible for the senseless attack was 29-year-old Omar Mateen. Omar Mateen was born in New York on November 16, 1986, to Afghan parents described as a family friend, as loving, close-knit, and very respectful of America. Around the time Omar was 5 years old, the family decided to move to the Sunshine State. Those who knew Omar during his school years didn't have many good things to say about him. Instead of focusing on learning, Omar enjoyed bullying his classmates, especially girls. and just couldn't shut up about violence and sex. Subjects like that might not be too weird for a teenager, but at the time, Omar was 8 years old. His teacher also mentioned that the boy always had his, quote, hands all over the place, on other children, in his mouth. Overall, Omar just didn't have any kind of self-control in class, and all efforts to counsel him failed miserably. And yet, somehow, this person was able to graduate with an Associate's of Science degree in Criminal Justice Technology in 2006, and Omar was apparently fascinated with law enforcement. He later got a job at the St. Lucie County Courthouse as a private security officer for G4S Secure Solutions. But as you might be able to guess, Omar's personality didn't really fit the uniform. One time, during his shift at the courthouse, Omar somehow thought it was a great idea to threaten a deputy and his family by saying that Al-Qaeda would kill them all. Omar got to keep his job and was just moved to another post. The county sheriff, though, was not having it and reported Omar to the FBI. A 10-month investigation followed, but nothing came of it. Then Omar's name popped up again after a suicide bombing in 2014 in Syria by a man named Moner Mohammed Abu Salha. The two men knew each other casually, according to the FBI, but again the case was quickly closed because, quote, there was nothing there. Omar Mateen was then removed from the terrorist watch list, and that didn't age well. Just 2 years later, he committed the deadliest terror attack on the U.S. since 9/11. Omar had claimed during the shooting that he was an Islamic soldier, but the FBI obviously still had a million questions about his true motives. And as Omar was not able to answer those questions, the authorities turned to his wife, Noor Salman, and they weren't too happy with what they found out. The couple had met online in 2011, got married the same year, and even had a son together, even though Omar was horribly abusive. This guy kicked, punched, and raped his wife all the time and beat her when she was pregnant with their child as well. Noor was also aware of her husband watching extremist videos on his computer, including beheadings, and was with Omar when he bought ammunition that he would later use at the Pulse nightclub. She even drove her husband to Pulse once because he wanted to scope it out. During one interview, Noor said, quote, looking back now, I should have seen the red flags. I should have seen his behavior. I should have seen it. That was quite literally an ocean of red flags. The FBI soon began to think Noor actually knew all along what Omar was planning, and her contradicting statements didn't help. First, Noor claimed that she didn't know what her husband was about to do when he left home that Saturday night. But then, in another interview, Noor admitted she had a suspicion Omar might be planning an attack. One can argue that after years of abuse, a person might not be able to act how they probably should in a situation like that. Still, the authorities felt that Noor should have contacted them a long time ago, and she failed to do so. She had to answer for the tragedy. Noor was eventually arrested in January 2017 and charged with aiding and abetting, as well as obstruction of justice. On March 30th, 2018, many were left disappointed, including survivors of the attack, when the jury acquitted Noor of both charges. However, the foreman did say that they were convinced that she did know about Omar's plans in advance, at least to some extent, just not enough to go to prison for it. There is still the unanswered question. Why did Omar Mateen walk into a gay club and kill 49 people? The ISIS attack was his own explanation. Some say he purposely targeted gay people and committed a hate crime. Others say Omar was actually homosexual himself and had been a regular visitor at Pulse. But as the FBI discovered, Omar had initially planned to attack Disney World. The only thing that we know for sure is that Omar Mateen was a mentally unstable, angry, and violent man who wanted to hurt as many people as he possibly could. For what reason? That answer died with him. That's 10-Minute Murder for today. Brief and bingeable true crime. Thank you for checking it out, and let me answer a question that I get pretty frequently. I've answered it once before, but it's been like a year. But the question is, why do you almost always tell the birth date of the person involved, the murderer? Why do you always give their birth date? And the answer is because many of you witches out there listening like to know their horoscope sign and say things like, yeah, that's definitely Capricorn. Capricorns do that stuff. Leave it to a Sagittarius. That kind of thing. Now, I don't personally subscribe to that, but I know enough of you do that it's interesting. It's an interesting part to it. I don't go through and tell you what his horoscope sign is, but I will tell you when they're born, and you can do the math from there. Before you blow out your candles and put your healing crystals away, make sure you are subscribed to 10 Minute Murder. Wherever you're listening right now, hit the subscribe button and you won't miss any future episodes. Also connect on social media. Links for all of that are in the show notes if you need them. If not, you can just type it in to the search bar wherever you're trying to connect with 10 Minute Murder and it'll pop right up. And for the record, I feel like I need to say this. I'm just joking about the witch thing, the crystals and the horoscope I really do include the birth date for that reason, but you're not witches. I get fortune cookies and I read the message inside, so I get it. And I know that's not the same thing, but you get what I'm saying. Thank you for listening to 10 Minute Murder. Be safe and make good choices.